Welcome everybody to TSO Live Talk Show. I'm your host Maya. You guys can't see me right now because I am interviewing Chief Margeson of Camp Hill Borough. Today we're going to be talking about a couple of things. Don't forget to like, share, and comment. And if you'd like to be a part of our show, please send us an email at the TSO Live Talk Show at gmail.com. So we're going to start all over. Please introduce yourself. I'm so sorry.
That's all right. Steve Margeson is my name. I'm the police chief, as you said, in the borough of Camp Hill. I've been here for about a year and a half in that role. Prior to that, I served in a couple of other police departments for many years. I'm one of the more senior officers around. So I have been a police chief before, and I'm currently the chief here in Camp Hill and enjoying the community very much.
Awesome. So there's a lot of things happening in the world that we see, and there's a lot of negative light on police officers. What can we do as a community to help shine a brighter light on the police community?
Well, I think as a community, first of all, the police have to consider themselves and acknowledge the fact that we are part of the community as well. On the part of police, what we all need to do is we need to make sure that we're conducting ourselves and our business in a legal, professional, and polite manner when we encounter and deal with citizens. And as far as members of the public, I know that there's been a lot of negative publicity in the past month or two regarding police community relations, but we would simply ask most encounters with the police are in fact cordial and polite and professional, and we would simply ask residents, if they happen to have the occasion to interact with a police officer, to try to take the same approach of being polite and cordial and professional. And I think if we all just trust each other a little bit more, perhaps that could lead to some better outcomes.
Right, 100%. And as far as what is your stance on police brutality? We've seen it a lot in the news. That's kind of like all we see when it comes to our fellow police officers.
Right.
So what is your stance on it?
Well, yes, we've seen a lot of it on the news coverage for the last month and a half. Police brutality, which is excessive force, it's unacceptable. It's wrong. And police officers and the vast majority of police officers acknowledge and accept this. If an officer uses excessive force, they have to be held accountable. In some cases, that means discipline or firing or even criminal charges against police officers. We've seen cases where that has happened. And the police officers of all people cannot be above the law. So that is very cut and dry. And again, I think you'll get almost universal agreement amongst police officials and police officers that when officers engage in excessive force, they have to be held to account. There's no question about it.
Right. So today is the anniversary of Philo Castillo. I don't know if you remember him from
Minnesota.
What are your thoughts of that? Do you feel like we have progressed since that, or do you feel like we're still stagnant?
Well, I think we have progressed. I think throughout the United States that police training and police operations and police department policies have improved and progressed over the years. Now, forgive me, I'm not intimately familiar with that incident, but I do know that it was a police use of deadly force that resulted in a man's death. I believe that the officer in that case was charged, however, was later found not guilty.
Correct.
Yes. Obviously the department and the district attorney, the authorities in place at that time felt that those charges were warranted. Although it did not result in a guilty verdict. And we've seen that not only in police cases, but in a number of cases when it's citizen versus citizen. I think the important thing, though, is in that case there was a recognition on the part of the proper authorities, and I'm assuming it would have been a county district attorney in that case, to move forward with the charges. What happens, in a jury verdict is another story. But to get to the crux of your question in terms of have we progressed and have we improved, the training, the methods, the policy development for police nationwide is slowly but gradually improving, and improving professionalism and improving the way that police interact with members of the public out there. There are, however, whether it's in policing or any other field or profession, there are outliers out there. Even though we might have the best training and the best policy, every once in a while we have people that stray from those guidelines and engage in misconduct. Again, when it's a police officer and it involves use of force, it's very traumatic and dramatic,
Right.
And as we've seen in the last month or two here, the effects that it can have. But overall, yes, I do think that the knowledge base, the expertise, the training has improved, and it's just unfortunate that in a relatively small handful of cases, as we've seen so prominently in the media, it gives a real black eye to law enforcement, and we're just going to have to deal with that and overcome that and do a better job going forward.
Right. So a few weeks ago, we talked about it on the TSO Live Talk Show. There was actually an article that was saying that the police academy were actually graduating police officers 6 weeks before it was time for them to graduate because of, I don't want to say short staff, but because they didn't have enough police officers on hand. How do you
Right.
feel about that? Because before you answer that question, also on the TSO Live Talk Show, we've also talked about mental health illness
Mm-hmm.
and not screening everybody, like, how do I put this? Screening their mental health as well before. Do you guys practice that?
Are you talking about screening the mental health of police applicants?
Right.
Yes. Yes, I'll answer that
Okay,
question
so
first,
2 questions.
and then
right.
I'll go back to the police academy.
Okay.
We do have some strict guidelines in Pennsylvania that we're governed in terms of the hiring and training of police officers by what is called the Municipal Police Education and Training Commission, and they set up specific criteria and standards. And part of that, in Pennsylvania at least, and I know that all states are different,
Right.
but police officers have to undergo a pre-employment medical and psychological testing before they can be a certified police officer. And again, I know some states don't have this, but essentially police officers in Pennsylvania have to be certified, that is, licensed by the state. And part of that, there's a lot to it, but part of that is the pre-employment psychological examinations. So we do believe that we have a system in place in Pennsylvania for that.
Okay.
Now, the first part of that question had to do with the police academy,
Right.
and I have heard of those accounts and read of those accounts where the academy is shortened. We need these cops out on the street, and so they, in the case that you're citing, I think there was a 6-week early
Right.
out.
Yeah.
Again, that unless there was specific authorization either from the state legislature or the governor of Pennsylvania, that wouldn't or couldn't happen, because I'll go back to that same governing body, the Municipal Police Officers Education and Training Commission, has very strict guidelines in terms of their academy training, the preparation. Officers cannot be certified. They cannot go out on the street and do police work unless they have attended the full police academy, which
Right.
is almost 1,000 hours now. It's, I want to say, 940 or 50 or 60 hours required in the basic police training academy now, and that is statewide. That's not up to my department or a different region of the state. So we do think that there's a very good support system for those criteria to make sure that we're getting qualified and competent officers out there. And I've got to believe that the vast majority of my fellow police chiefs do not want to see that training shortened or watered down in any fashion. It's important to have well-trained officers out there. I mean, we've seen again, what we've been talking about in the news media,
Right.
some of the negative effects of having people either not have proper training or good policy governing their actions.
Right. And we've seen that a lot. I mean, on our previous shows, we've talked about, we list all the names of the people who have died due to excessive force.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of young people who are my age, who are African American or who are, all different ethnicities that are scared of police officers.
Yes.
How can we fix that? I know that's a tough question to ask, but for like my son, when he plays with his toys, I want to say he doesn't know what's everything that's happening.
Sure.
On what's
He's
happening
still
in the
young.
world. He's still young. He's only 5. He loves police officers. As soon as he sees an officer, he's like, "Yes, mama, look, a police officer." But in the back of my mind, I get scared sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So how can we fix that? Or is there something that we can do as a community to help that?
One of the things that, and I know many communities have done this, for instance, in Camp Hill, which, as you said, we're a small borough, we're a relatively small community, but we do have a school resource officer, and that school resource officer, when school is in session, is full-time in our schools in Camp Hill, including from kindergarten right on through high school. And what we've been able to do, and what we're trying to do, among other things, but primarily, is to build that rapport and relationship with youngsters. I mean, starting kindergarten would be 5 years old, right?
Right.
To build those relationships and start a rapport, so that young people at the earliest ages can learn to trust and rely on police officers. And I have to say that the vast majority of officers are good men and women that are doing a good job and are they like people, and they're very people friendly. Again, like we talked a few minutes ago, unfortunately, even though I say that, we know that there have been some bad apples in the bunch. And like anything else, they seem to get most of the attention and cause most of the consternation among the public, understandably so. But I would just say to try to keep the faith that those situations with those officers engaging in that kind of misconduct are the exception rather than the rule. And the vast majority, there are millions of officer-citizen encounters in the United States, actually tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, of these encounters on an annual basis that go well, that they actually, but that's not newsworthy when everything goes well and we have a happy ending. When we have a tragic ending or a tragic catastrophe of any kind, of course, that's what gets the headlines, and that helps to perpetuate the impression that, oh, holy cow, this is happening all the time. I mean, daily, multiple times daily, weekly, and I'm happy that it's not happening with that kind of frequency. Anytime it happens is too much, and we need to keep, in law enforcement, as well as our elected officials, our governing bodies, in a borough like Camp Hill, that's our borough council and our mayor. And I can tell you that even in our little borough government environment, that we've had those discussions with our elected officials, with our council members and our mayor about what is it that we're doing with our training and our department policy and our follow-up on use of force incidents to make sure that we're providing the best service possible, that we're ensuring the rights and safety of all citizens. And we're committed to that, and I can say that here on our local level that we have engaged concerned elected officials and police officers, members of the department, that know what the expectation is for members of this department and what would be tolerated and what will not be tolerated on their part. So hopefully that because of the extreme publicity and the tragic issues that have happened recently, I'm certainly hoping that maybe other agencies that perhaps, and there might be some out there, I don't see any of them locally, maybe they're not as conscientious in terms of their training or policy development.
Right.
But we need to stay on top of that, and I really think here locally, at our local level, we are, and we do have elected officials at the local level that are engaged and are concerned, and they're asking us these questions and wanting to see what it is that we're doing in terms of
Right.
policy and training.
And it's a big relief to hear that. Just like we said earlier, our TSO family, there's a lot of negativity surrounding our police officers. But just like Chief Margeson said, you know, these are men and women. They have families. They're just like us, just in uniform. And sometimes it's okay to be scared, and you know, it's okay to have all those emotions. But that's when that respect and that professionalism comes in. And we as citizens have to have that too. I know people's first thought is to, you know, because of fear, is to automatically take out their phone when they get pulled over by police officers.
Yes.
And we want to break that barrier,
Mm-hmm.
because your job is to serve and protect. And
Yes.
right now, the media has just showed the complete opposite. But we want to shine a light so that everybody knows that our police officers are out here for us.
Absolutely.
And the media, of course, y'all know how the media goes. Except for TSO Live Talk Show, we gonna give you the real business. But there's a lot of negativity.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to come here today, and I appreciate you for taking the time out of your day to talk to us, because it's so negative.
Mm-hmm.
But you guys are just
Yes.
doing your job. But those bad apples, when they're in that bunch, it just makes it all of it look
Well,
bad.
the bad apples have to go.
They do.
And no matter where it is and what department it is, if we discover that we have some bad apples, they have to go one way or another.
Awesome. And one last question. I know my co-host, he's dying for me to ask this question. Justin, if you're watching this, listen, I cannot see the question that you just asked me because I'm recording right now, but I know you want me to ask this question, so I'm gonna just do it right quick. What are your opinions on defunding the police?
I think that's a bad idea. And I think that in some of our major cities, we're seeing some of the initial repercussions from that. So I'm not saying that there shouldn't be more investment and more resources put into some other areas. I know specifically they're talking about early education and healthcare for young people, and mostly in our major cities. But I might be biased in this respect, but I think the defunding movement is a mistake, and I hope that doesn't happen, because quite frankly, that could end up being more detrimental to people that need the support of the police more than anybody.
Right. Okay. Well, once again, thank you so much, Chief, for taking the time and talking with me. If you have anything you would like to say to the community and to all of our fans all around the world, now is your time.
Well, just thank you for coming to see me, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you, and have a good day.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.